Well, Alyssa, it is officially softball season in Tri-County High School.
Yeah, you got to clarify that hat.
Yeah, I was about to say Michigan State. Wow.
Tri-County hat. Don't worry, not Michigan State. Basketball team lost in sectional championship tonight, so it's officially softball season.
Ooh.
And
Okay.
There's one player that plays basketball. She's already in the group message asking when practices, so that's a good sign.
Nice.
She's ready to move on.
Welcome into the Hara Press Box. We do have a guest with us tonight, Marcus Bekla. He will be our hockey analyst, self-proclaimed expert, or just where are you at?
Yeah, we'll go with self-proclaimed expert, and then people can decide what they want to call me after that.
That's true. Yeah, ask again in a half an hour.
Sure. Yeah.
So last episode, we didn't talk a lot about the NWHL All-Star Game. We wanted to save that for this episode. We hit on it. We recognized it. We recognized the success that the league did have, and that we were impressed by everything that went down. So we'll revisit that. I also have a Word document of our script of what we're going to talk about on the podcast, and the first page of this script, there are a couple of quotes from a November 2016 article that we had previously talked about, and we'll probably revisit some of those things and see how the leagues develop, because kind of what we talked about, this NWHL, where is it at as far as compared to the other leagues, in my opinion. And Alyssa, did you put it at the top as well for your leagues? And
yeah,
or did you say that? Okay, yeah, and you were saying it's kind of sign of the times. If NWSL was in season, maybe you put that at number one. But right now, in season of hockey, NWHL has the number one spot. I agree, number one spot for NWHL. Wanted to give Marcus a chance to chime in as far as what you've seen from the professional leagues, the four main leagues, so NWHL, NWSL, WNBA, and then the NPF, which National Pro Fast Pitch, Alyssa and I both put at number 4. One team just bowing out another team, sort of on the ropes, changing ownerships. What's your thoughts on where these leagues rank as far as the power rankings go?
So what I would say is, what's the softball league called again?
National Pro Fast Pitch, NPF.
So I would guess that would have to go fourth then, since you guys are gonna have to help me out with that one if we end up discussing that at all. Then I would probably put. Ooh, this is tough. I would probably put the NWSL at third, and I think the main reason why is I think soccer as a whole is still trying to find its niche within America. It's just as far as popularity goes, I'd go with third. Maybe as far as talent, it could probably compete with where the NWHL is right now, the hockey league. I don't know how deep the player pool in the NWHL is right now. For me, it seems like there's pretty good depth across the board, but you got the Canadian Hockey League too, which takes some of these players that we're seeing now in the Olympics. And so I would put the NWSL third, and then I'd have to go with the Women's Hockey League then second, and then I'd have to put the WNBA up at the top just because they've been more established. Maybe I have a different mindset coming from Minnesota and having seen the Lynx kind of have incredible success over the past almost a decade now. I mean, they probably average 8,000 to 9,000 fans a game, and it's having 4 Hall of Fame players on their team at any one given time.
Mm-hmm.
I see the talent maybe differently than some of these other leagues. So I guess I would go number 1, WNBA, number 2, the National Women's Hockey League, then the Soccer League, and then softball.
And that's in last episode, I did mention that those rankings there, those top 4 is how I had it up until the All-Star game of the Hockey League. So
sure.
I think, the top 3, if you can have a top-heavy ranking of 4 leagues, then this is it, where those 3 are sort of all there, and especially the top 2. being close together.
Yeah, I'd agree with
You
that.
talked about soccer catching on and going to the hockey theme of sort of tonight's episode about hockey catching on and our athletes game, the women's athletes game catching on. Alyssa and I have talked some about expansion of the NWHL. When is it coming? Where is it going to? And I don't know. We've probably acted as if we want to rush this along. It's time. Let's expand. But over the last week or so, after the All-Star game and all that's happened and how well it went, I've started to think this is a very calculated move by the league. Is it? And this is something they're keeping their eye on. They want to get they want to become established before they grow. They're thinking about how they're going to grow. Alyssa and I talked about, okay, do they maybe add 4 more Northeastern franchises? Do they go west? Do they go to Minneapolis and add a team in Minneapolis, and then maybe like a Detroit, Toronto, Winnipeg, something like that, and have a Western Conference as well? So I'd like to revisit that as well. And like you mentioned there a few minutes ago, the Minnesota mindset. Where do you see how far off are we from having a professional team in this league? Because we do have the Whitecaps, an independent team there in Minneapolis, right? And then so when do you see that coming as far as a move to Minnesota?
Sure. Well, I would say that you guys are definitely correct. If you brought that up before, that the NWHL commissioner, her name escapes me now, but she's
Danny Ryan.
Yeah,
Ryland.
There you go. She has done an incredible job of moving these all-star games to places that don't have teams. So I think they were in Pittsburgh last year.
Yeah.
And honestly, as far as I'm concerned, that should be the first market that they hit. Last year, during the NCAA tournament, actually, Robert Morris University, which is in Pittsburgh, or Pittsburgh area, I'm not sure what the exact town is called, but it's the Pittsburgh area. They traveled in mass to Madison to watch their hockey team play in the NCAA tournament. So there's definitely a huge women's hockey market there. And I didn't know it at the time, but during that game, I actually bumped into the president of Robert Morris University and talked to him about I know, crazy. I didn't know it at the time, but I talked to him about how he wanted to kind of mirror the women's hockey program there after Wisconsin's. And I thought that was a really cool thing. And if he sees that it could be on that level in Pittsburgh, I think that's really good for the league and something that they should definitely look into. I would say that would probably be the first market. And the reason I say that before they come to the Midwest is I'm pretty sure that they use busing as a primary form of transportation to these cities. So I think you gotta hit the East Coast a little bit more before you move to the Midwest. Now, Minnesota is definitely prepared and ready for women's hockey league team. But I would say I'd honestly have to give the assessment that I don't think the league's ready yet to move to the Midwest. Not quite yet. So I would look at a place like Pittsburgh. And I don't know. I don't know if you would expand into smaller markets. I think that's a little risky too. Because, we've seen just in this past year on the college level, teams like North Dakota, who you would think is an established women's hockey school. Now that gets into more, issues with money distribution as far as a college goes, but you see issues with that. So you got to be careful with the small market too. But I would say Pittsburgh would definitely be the place I would be looking at. But is Minnesota ready? 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, and we see you talking about the small market being careful there. I know Boston isn't a small market, but sort of like an FCKC in the NWSL soccer league, we see them struggle now and moving out west. So NWHL sort of waiting back and seeing what everybody else is doing and then making their move. Yeah.
Interesting
I'd also say how that's going. Yeah.
I'd also say that I think there's a more willingness of partnerships, and I don't know if when it grows to the point where it can sustain on its own, which I think it can with 4 teams. But as you expand, I think a partnership with NHL teams is a much more likely option than with some of the other sports. As we talked about with soccer, the MLS is even trying to find its own place, and then the NBA is just too big, and I don't know if you even want to partner WNBA with the NBA, because I think that WNBA is on its own can stand alone, and you see the great players that are, even stars that people can name the names of people, whereas with the NWHL and the NWSL right now, aside from exposure in the World Cup or Olympics, you really have nobody that one athlete, I guess. Or maybe Carly Lloyd a little bit, but I don't know.
I thought people didn't know Carly Lloyd's name.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have brought that up.
Yeah. I thought someone that was running for the president of the U.S. Soccer Federation said no one knows Carly Lloyd's name.
Oh, okay. Well.
So I'm surprised. I'm just really surprised that you brought up Carly Lloyd's name. That's all.
All right. No, just from experience, I think that's definitely a name that people have heard of. That's my opinion. I'll leave it at that.
Who said that, Alyssa?
I don't know, some keeper who's one of the best keepers to go down in history.
Oh.
Well, all good things die, right?
Yeah. Sometimes.
To just to go through a couple of those quotes from the article. So this was a Hockey News article, Ken Campbell, November 2016, and again, I just saw this as I was going down the script. So the prediction that he had made was that the NWHL will fold, the CWHL will pick up the Buttes, that the Pride will I think pair with the Blades team that's in the Canadian League.
Sure,
and
that surprised me. Sorry, I don't mean to talk over you. I didn't even know that there was a United States team in the Canadian Hockey League. So when I saw that, I was shocked.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess, hey, if the NWHL wants to expand into Canada, I'm sure there's more than enough players there too. So,
right.
Yeah, and then the last thing on here was that Danny Ryland has had conversations with the CWHL.
Well, there you go.
How far those went? Yeah, because the article sort of started off with that the CWHL had made this decision that paying players, it wasn't feasible. The philosophy doesn't line up with the NWHL because, and this is what Alyssa and I talked about, we kind of decided one league was trying to prep players for the Olympics, CWHL prepping players for the Olympics, while the NWHL is trying to develop this league of players of the next generation and actually sustaining the sport. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Yeah.
You had started to dive a little bit into college hockey.
Sure. Yeah.
So I don't know. We've shared our Badger bias, and it's and I haven't paid a whole lot of attention this year, not as much as I normally do.
Sure.
As some players, one in particular is on the Canadian national team instead of being in Madison, so it's tough for me to keep tabs too hard on the team in Madison. But Wisconsin's still number one. Missing Emily Clark, missing Pankowski, who those two are top line players, still number one. Is there other teams missing a whole lot, or is this just showing the excellence of that program that is now with Minnesota sort of falling off out of grace, establish themselves as the top?
I think Wisconsin's showing their depth right now. I think what we've had conversations about is, boy, if Minnesota didn't have that line, they wouldn't be as good as Wisconsin. But it seems like Minnesota always has that line. And when you talk about women's hockey, I feel you have, those two established programs in the Midwest, in Minnesota and Wisconsin. And then out east, you have a ton of great players too. As far as people missing missing this entire year for the Olympics, I think the only Minnesota player that is on a current Minnesota player that's on an Olympic roster is Kelly Panic. And now that is their best player, but it's only one. And I don't know if there's any Annie Pankowski situations with Minnesota where someone tried out and came up just short. But as far as that goes, yeah, I think it's just really showing the depth that Wisconsin has to still be on top. Another one was shocking to me, and I kind of looked into this a little bit once I saw the U.S. rosters, is there's 3 current players on Team USA from Boston College. And I think they're ranked 3rd currently. So I think that speaks to that program too. And they're all 3 defensemen. So that's pretty impressive right there. And speaks to their depth. I think they're still an incredible team and definitely a contender. So as far as that goes, Minnesota, yeah, they're missing one, but I think they've been built on a top line kind of carrying the team, and that's kind of why they've fallen off, whereas Wisconsin and Boston College are really showing their depth with the players that have gone to the Olympics.
Kept your eye on Clarkson, or is that still a tough spot to even look up how they're doing?
It's a tough one, but their goaltender, Shea Tilley, she's incredible. And I think as long as you've got a goaltender, you've got a chance, and really, and she's one of the best. I look at Katie Burt. She got drafted number 1 overall. She's from Boston College. So she'll be going to Boston, I believe, for the Pride. I think they took her 1st overall. And so I think they've got a shot. Kristen Campbell's done well. I guess just going through the goalie position at Wisconsin, she's done great. So, and then Ohio State's goalie's done really well too. Savay, she's a great player too. But yeah, Clarkson, they're going to be there at the end of the year for sure. They were a young team last year overall, and they took it to Wisconsin in the championship game. And like I said, as long as you got good goaltending and you can put the puck on net, I think you got a chance.
And like what we've talked about, plan is to be there again, maybe for Frozen 4 if I get the chance to come up in Minneapolis. Yeah. Alyssa, you might have to hop in the back seat, make a trip up to Minnie.
Let's go.
One other question for you, Marcus, if you had a chance to look into Patty Kaz front runners.
Yeah, well, I don't get to watch a whole lot of the players out east, and I think that's where you have to look this year. I mean, I don't think I've watched a full BU or BC game. I've seen some highlights, but really the top 2 players in the country are on those 2 teams. Now I got to remember their names. So now you're going to test me.
I should know one, but I can't remember it either right now.
There's Victoria Bach. She's the one from Boston University. She's absolutely incredible. And like I've said, like just from highlights that I've seen, she's a great scorer. I mean, it's going to be the scorers really. I think last year with Dabian winning, you're not probably going to see that again. That was kind of an anomaly, I would say. So I think you got to look out east, because I think some of the top players, like Kelly Panic from Minnesota, who would just rack up assists, and I think she probably had close to 40, if not more, assists last year by herself. She would probably have been one, but I think you gotta look at someone from BU or BC. And now I'm forgetting the girl from BC, but she's a freshman, and she I think is leading the entire NCAA in points. So I would guess that it's probably her, and I have to look up her name.
Daryl Watts.
Yep, that's it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's probably going to win it. Just if I'm just looking on stats. Now, if I deep dived into every game, maybe I'd see something different or a flaw in her game. But I think she's probably going to take it.
We'll dive more into USA versus Canada, that rivalry, what we just saw, about 12 hours ago as far as that game in the Olympics. But first of all, ask Alyssa. We've talked about the NWHL. We've talked about progress in that league. We've talked about where they're at, where they're going. We've now hit some on the college game. And even though we've seen some players leave to go to the Olympics, we're still seeing excellent hockey at the collegiate level. With all of this good going around hockey, how perfect is it that the Olympics are going on right now, and what does that do for our sport in general? Do you any feeling on that?
Yeah, it's pretty much the perfect storm. I mean, you're always going to have an upswing, whether it's going to be the Olympics or the World Cup. So you see it across multiple sports, especially on, I think, the soccer side of things, because you have the World Cup and the Olympics with that. And if you look at hockey, they have Worlds in the Olympics, but Worlds isn't as big as the World Cup is in soccer. So I think the Olympics definitely builds that excitement up. But I think that the league has done a great job in terms of them losing their star players for this whole season. It's not like they just left for a month and they're going to come back. They lost them for this whole season. Mm-hmm. So I honestly don't know what they did, but whatever they did, whatever Danny did, it worked, and it's working. So to be able to sustain the hype throughout this whole season, they just did a great job with it all.
How have the broadcast went Olympics? And I've only got to watch some bit of the replays.
You're really gonna test me on this? You really want my answer?
Yeah.
Let's just say last night's game was definitely a game that was muted very early on in the game. Mm-hmm. A lot of comparisons to the other side, to the men's side. Lots and lots. And they're all very well, obviously, educated people on the game of hockey, just not on our side. So it was obviously a little bit frustrating for me to listen to that. I think overall this Olympics has just been terrible as far as commentary goes. But, what you going to do about it?
What are you going to do? Right.
Figure skating probably has the best commentary.
Yeah. That's what I've heard, that people really enjoy the figure skating commentary.
Yeah, yep.
No Joe Buck?
They're worse than Joe Buck.
Tony Romo?
Okay, come on now.
So USA and Canada both advance, even though Canada did beat USA 2-1. That was last night's final score. USA now, I think this is, I looked this up, and I think I got every game in here, 1-6 since last October against Canada. USA's record in that series that they played to finish out the year last year. And one of the things, and to start this conversation off with, I think Alyssa, I think you'd either retweeted this or liked it, so it showed up. But to quote the tweet from NBC Sports, their quote was, "One of the greatest rivalries in women's hockey."
God, I hope I didn't retweet that.
Did you happen to hear who was the greatest rivalry in women's hockey? Is there? I mean, are there European countries that really don't like each other, and there are also number 1 and number 2 in the world? Or am I missing something with that tweet? I mean, there's no question, right? I mean, this is
right.
This is Premier Hockey USA Canada.
Yeah.
So we call that Premier. But now we're seeing this sort of lopsided affair where Canada has USA's number. So, Marcus, in your opinion, how the next time these two play, which might be in a few days, how big of an underdog is USA versus Canada?
I don't know if they're, from this last game right here, I thought it was actually pretty evenly matched. I don't know about what the stats were, but I think the United States outshot Canada, which I think in every sport we've all talked that shots. You can outshoot someone and still lose in any sport. So
I got my scarf hanging up right there.
Yeah, I see them. I see them. You can be the best team in the league at shots. They got to hit the net and they got to not hit the goalie. So, but yeah, I think you saw that there were countless opportunities for the United States, and I don't know if they just played nervous, if they just can't. And a couple of those, like the one that's popping into my head right now is Hillary Knight had a easy tap in, late in the third, and she just, I don't know, just wasn't either in position, couldn't get her stick down in time, and just it just screams of a team that they want this so bad that they're just
overthinking everything.
Overthinking, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think the one. I'm about to compliment NBC, so hold on. The one thing that I did like was in between periods when they showed the faces of Hillary Knight and I believe it was Brianna Decker on the bench just before the game with their headphones on, completely locked in, like there was nothing else in the world that mattered to them at that point, which is totally fair. And probably this is the pinnacle of their sport. You never know when this could be the last run at an Olympic gold medal for anyone, with it being, every 4 years. And then they showed pictures of the two newbies, our Wisconsin ladies, Emily Clark and Sarah Nurse, and they're just laughing and smiling there, and they're just playing loose. And I think another thing that I don't know, I don't know a whole lot about the coaches on either side, but you got to credit the Canadian coach. She started that I think the rookie line is, I guess, what you would call it, of Canada. She started them in their first two games and kind of allowed them to get going and just kind of say, hey, this is what we do. We win gold medals. I think that's their mindset. And for the United States, it's kind of like, this is everything. This is the team we can't beat. And the thing that I sincerely hope is I'm not sure who they play. It might be Sweden in the quarterfinal, maybe, or Switzerland, one of the two. I hope the United States doesn't overlook a team like that, because that's the scariest thing.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, and it could be, I don't know. Actually, there's a quarterfinal round, isn't there? So it could be Finland too, because Finland's a team that could easily beat them, as we saw like in the first game the United States played. So they got to be careful with that. When you put so much into beating one team, I think that's more of it. I would not call them an underdog, though.
I am extremely nervous for the knockout rounds for the U.S. Because you pointed to something that I directly thought of last night in terms of, I think NBC tweeted, shockingly enough, a picture after the game or something like that, and it said, "See you in the finals." Yeah, we're not there yet. Yeah. So just thinking ahead, I'm right there with you. I really hope they don't overlook any sort of team, because they did not look impressive against Finland. They looked impressive for the first 5 minutes against the Canadians, and then pretty much fell off the face of the earth, in my opinion. And in terms of coaching, from what I saw on Twitter, it really sounded like, and I don't know a whole lot about this coach either, but it sounded like he was the equivalent of Jill Ellis.
Okay.
So if you know, I know Clay knows how I feel about Jill Ellis at this point in her tenure at U.S. Soccer. I'm just not a fan of her.
Sure.
So any sort of comparison, just not going to be a fan.
The question I just typed down to ask will involve sort of that discussion there. But to just the schedule for upcoming games for the Olympics, we'll have Sweden versus Finland. Winner of that will play the U.S. The winner of the Russian athletes and Switzerland will play against Canada. Those two quarterfinal matchups are in 2 days. No, I guess, yeah. So tomorrow night our time, and then in 2 days after that is when the U.S. will play next. But that question that I wanted to get back to, simply, who is in a better position? Which national team is in a better position, soccer or hockey?
Which national team? And you're asking that question on the day of the allocation players were announced. In this
answer, this is all things considered, right? This is okay, in the future, chances of winning gold, chances of winning World Cups. What are they drawing? What pool of players are they drawing from? The establishment, the president's stance, whatever that may be, to go into your decision.
Mm-hmm. I think soccer is still in the better position than hockey, just because there's more competition in terms of the top 5 countries in soccer are ridiculous. I just said that all backwards, but that will amp up hopefully, I'm still waiting for that, but I still think in the long run, soccer is going to be better off than hockey because it's driven by competition and they're not looking at just that one team like it is in hockey. So if you have 4 other countries who have a legitimate shot at knocking you off, either in the World Cup or the Olympics, you better be bringing it every single time.
Marcus, any thoughts?
I think I'd agree with that. I guess it kind of depends on what you mean by a better place, because I think the U.S. hockey team, they're oh man, do I really want to say they're never going to catch Canada?
They're never going to catch Canada.
They're never going to be there. Yeah. They're going to be the second place. They're going to be the second place team no matter what. And the thing is there's, like Alyssa was saying, there's nothing behind them to push them either. I guess just reaching towards catching one team is the only thing that they really have to deal with. I don't think anyone behind is going to come for them from behind either. So I think then you kind of just stay there. And I don't think that there's really any way that they catch Canada either. Now, that also, when you're talking about the top 2 teams, that doesn't mean that we can't beat them. Obviously, there's going to be, in the gold medal game, if they make it there, because I'm going to assume Canada's going to be there.
You got to assume Canada's going to be there.
Yeah. As much as I'm scared of the U.S. not being there, I'm going to assume that Canada will be. I would say, they have a good chance of beating them, but they're always going to play second to Canada because that's kind of the Canadian sport. Now in soccer, I would, and maybe you disagree with this, Alyssa and Clay too, that you probably follow it a little bit more than me. Is the United States still considered number 1? Or is it?
Yes. By FIFA rankings, yes.
Okay.
By my rankings, no.
So
by my rankings, yeah.
By your rankings, yeah, and okay. So who would you guys say can push them, or so is pushing them?
We are coaching stability, one move of coaching stability away from my vote being absolutely no for best team in the world.
Okay.
And the team that I would replace them at number 1 is the same team that is number 1 for hockey, and that is Canada. Canada. I mean, that's their roster is phenomenal. And they just need somebody to tell them where to go. And right now they don't have that. That's what's holding them back.
Okay.
Well, we'll see with their coaching change, the coaching change may actually be something really, really good for Canadian soccer. But
so do you think that you're saying their talent is better than the United States then?
Yeah, I would say so.
So then maybe I do have to change my opinion then, because I think then maybe soccer. I don't know. That's a tough question, Clay. That's a
yeah, and I think it is the more you. So the soccer team's been built up as much as they deserve, right? I mean, they've won, and we've struggled recently, and we have to listen to Alyssa talk about how much every time, but for a good reason, still there. But we've been put on a pedestal basically, and while Canada's kind of in the back room getting better and better, and I guess that question becomes more involved the more you talk about it and more you think about it, because what does the future hold? How much is the present impacting what's going to happen? And that involves, from a soccer standpoint, that's the U.S. and that's Canada. Like what you said, the coaching change. What kind of factor? How does that help? How does that hurt the team? I'm afraid it's going to hurt them. You mentioned how it can help them. So we're just going to have to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
One other thing about the Olympics, they announced that they're moving to 10 women's teams from in the future. I didn't know if you guys had anything to say about that. Obviously, it seems like it's a positive, right? I mean, that's more exposure, that's more talent, that's more. Obviously, countries are going to have to fund their teams because, hey, there's 2 more spots that we can send a team to the Olympics with. Any other big thoughts other than, hey, good news?
Definitely good news. Any type of expansion to other countries is incredible for the sport. And I didn't get a chance to watch Japan or Korea play, but from all I've heard is positive things with the growth of the sport there. I mean, they're still miles behind, but you got to start somewhere. So yeah, definitely a good thing.
Probably good as well for our collegiate teams. I mean, I know we have scouts and there's scouts all over the world and they're good at their jobs, but this is also opens up another market to bring those teams in and boost our collegiate ranks, and we'll see how that affects our game as well.
Definitely.
That just about wraps up what I had. Is there anything that we missed that I said we wanted to talk about, or other things to hit on?
Now all the Australians are coming to the NWSL, though.
Who's the back liner coming? Carpenter?
Yeah.
Ellie Carpenter? Right?
Ellie Carpenter, the 17-year-old.
Yeah, and she's going to Seattle camp?
Thought it was Portland.
Portland? Okay, and Rachel Corbeau's, undrafted Rachel Corbeau's, going to Seattle's camp.
Yep.
So smart move there, NWSL franchises.
Yeah.
Just passed up a top 10 pick to let her go to an already established franchise.
You know what's an even better move is to not release the schedule till the day before the season starts.
Is that the plan?
I think so.
Wow.
I think Duffy has that in place.
And no other word on any commissioner work, I assume.
Nope.
Okay. Well, yeah. So that clock ticks, and I'm sure we'll have conversations about that over the next few weeks before that season starts. Preseason starts next week. Is that right? Is that what I saw?
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay. Next week. So we'll keep our eye on that. We'll keep our eye on the rosters as those shrink to the 20-player maximum. The teams will be able to carry into the season, and we'll comment on that. We thank Marcus for joining us tonight.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And hopefully there's plenty more opportunities to talk hockey, talk soccer, whatever you want to talk about, and more than welcome to join us anytime.
Awesome.
As for tonight, I think that wraps it up. We kept it under 40 minutes, so everybody can go to sleep a couple minutes early. And we thank you for stopping by the Hara Press Box.